Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Buffs. As always, my name is Mario Vitanzi. With me is Zach Seegers. You can follow us on Twitter at Vitanzi Therapy, at Zach_Seegers. And damn, Zach, what a difference a week makes. And I'm just going to come out and say it to everybody watching and listening. First of all, we appreciate you so much and your support as we continue to build on what we've done. But just a little peek behind the curtain. Usually we have bullet points that we like to hit. We put together a little bit of show prep because we want to make sure that we bring certain things to you. But I just feel like nothing that we could come up with beforehand, Zach, would really do it justice, because no matter what we plan, no matter what we say, after what happened against Stanford, you're simultaneously at a loss for words, but then you also have a shit ton that you need to get off your chest, right? So we'll just, first of all, address the elephant in the room. 29-0 going into halftime. I can't tell you how many people I saw on Twitter said they fell asleep because it was a late-ass game. They fell asleep at halftime, and they woke up the next morning like, what the hell just happened? And as somebody who watched it, and you and I were texting back and forth between one another during the second half, Zach, it was like a car crash in slow motion. And it's weird because we felt so good about that first half. And I'm like, man, I would love to see our backup quarterbacks get some reps. I would like to see some of the guys lower on the roster get some reps, because we know there's a lot of talented kids. And my God, the starters blew a 29-point lead. And I mean, I'm going to kick it to you because I need to, every time that I think about this, it throws me off my game, because this shouldn't have happened. It's absolutely inexcusable. So I'm going to kick it to you. I'm going to gather my thoughts. Give me your 2 cents, and then we'll go, we'll play the clip of what Dion had to say. But talk us through it here, Zach.
I just see a team that's, I don't know, like really lacking discipline. And it's in the penalties. Like, they lost this game largely because of the disparity in penalty yards. That was absolutely massive. You could even go down to specific moments like Travis Hunter. I believe it was Travis Hunter. Maybe it was Stoutmeyer. But having his pass interference or defensive holding call, whatever it was, that turned a really long field goal into eventually a touchdown for Stanford in a game that went to double overtime. Like, that's massive. Yeah, I like this team's lacking discipline. And I think it's important to keep the context of everything. Like, it's not like Sean Payton, another hyped up coach with the Broncos. The Broncos are falling so far short of expectations right now that I think it's fair to go like, what's going on here? With Prime, they're so far ahead of expectation that I think everything has to be tempered. Like, yes, they lost this game, but how many other coaches in America would have this program at 4-3 right now off of last season? How many, like, legitimate, not many, could have gotten this much talent into the program in one off season, like the name brand of a Kirby Smart or a Nick Saban or whatever. Like, I'm not saying there's none. There's probably 10 or so, but few and far between. So all that given, it is still really disappointing. I don't know. They're a lot more talented than Stanford. I think some of it was bad luck with Stanford kind of finding an identity in the second half, something they hadn't done the whole season leading up to this, with rotating quarterbacks, rotating wide receivers, just like struggling to find what their starting offense was. They clicked into gear at a time that was unfortunate for the Buffaloes, but CU was still the more talented team, and I think they were just lacking discipline. It looked to me like a team that starts to feel the like rug getting pulled out from under them and just like freezes and just folds up and goes, "Oh my God, it's happening! It's happening! It's happening!" And I don't know. That's what it felt. It felt like they had no poise. Like, I think Shador, of course, he missed on that throw, which was rare for him. But generally speaking, I thought he was poised in this game. Maybe not by his standards. The rest of the team, like, could not have been further from that level of cool and level that we've talked about with Shador all season. And frankly, again, for Shador's standards, he wasn't even there.
Yeah, and that's crazy to think about, right? I mean, Shador threw for 400 yards, 5 touchdowns. The one, obviously, really bad pick, which came in overtime, the incomplete pass that you talked about, which is, it was a pass to Travis Hunter where if he's on the mark, it's a first down, the game's probably over, and you escape with the win, and you're licking your wounds, but you're like, man, that could have been really bad. And I mean, God, Zach, that's a pass that he hits 18 out of 20 times, 19 out of 20 times, and that just happened to be the
19 out of 20.
That I don't know if he didn't plant his foot, it just sailed on him a little bit. If his arm angle was off, if he rushed it, I have no idea. But that was the most uncharacteristic thing that I think that we saw the entire game, because that is almost a 100% guarantee that Shedeur in that moment hits that pass, and it just wasn't meant to be. The only other player that I was really satisfied with, I mean, Xavier Weaver had an incredible first half and then completely disappeared in the second. Not to say that that's necessarily his fault. Maybe that's what the game plan called for. But I mean, do you put that on the OC, Zach? Because I'm going to be honest, like, we see what a great job that Dion has done. And you already touched on it. Like, the program has already exceeded expectations. Yeah, this is a god-awful loss. It sucks that you give up a 29-point lead and you end up losing in double overtime. But still, where Dion has this program, you have to just grit it and get through it. But I have not been impressed with the coordinators on this team. I mean, God, you want to talk about being undisciplined, Zach? How many procedural penalties did we have on defense? How many times did we have a kid running off the field with 3 seconds on the snap clock, and it's an illegal substitution? And of course, Dion being Dion says that he puts that responsibility on himself, which is completely absurd. Like, it's not Dion's job to keep track of every single personnel groupings on the offense and defensive side of the ball. I mean, we're almost midway through the season, or we are midway through the season, man. This kind of stuff can't happen. I mean, we talked in week 1 about how shocked we were at how disciplined this team was. Like, we specifically talked about that. And then the Nebraska game happened, and the CSU game happened. It's like, all right, they're big-time rivals. Emotions were high, and it went out the window a little bit, and it's just been spiraling. So where do they go from here? How do they clean up their act? Like, and let's kick it to Dion right here, because I think he's shedding some light on this situation, Zach, and he puts it better than anybody could in terms of the trajectory of this team. So if you have that clip of Dion ready, go ahead and pot it up.
Today was pathetic. All the love that you received, all the love we received, you getting ready to see that flip. And don't get beside yourself on social media and start responding to the foolishness, because they're right. They're right.
They are right. I mean, and like, nobody knows that more than Dion, right? Dion is unapologetically brash, and that is why we all love him. And he talks the talk and he walks the walk. And he knows at the end of the day, it doesn't matter that his son is the quarterback. It doesn't matter that Travis Hunter is on that team. It doesn't matter all the people on the sideline. It doesn't matter who is on that staff, on that roster. At the end of the day, it's Dion. And he knows that. And so I think with all of this, he's handling it as well as he can. And he's putting these kids in an excellent position, because what's the most important thing in college football, Zach? If you're trying to build a program, and we talked about this, eyes on the program. That's how you get recruits, because recruits coming out of high school want to be seen so that they can get film out and make it to the NFL. That is the ultimate goal of college football. And right now, no program has more eyes than CU, and it is because of Dion, but it is because of Dion that they have this reputation. And at some point, you are either going to crush under the pressure, or that pressure is going to turn you into a diamond. The first few weeks of the season, diamond. The last several weeks of the season, they've crumbled. They've collapsed. And nothing that Dion said is out of character. Nothing is off base, because it was embarrassing. And they are going to take flack on social media, and they do deserve it, because it doesn't matter who you're playing against. If you have a freaking 29-point lead at halftime and you blow that lead, that is a massive red flag. Now, you do it against arguably the worst team in the Pac-12, and it's really bad. And at the end of the day, Deion knows that that's his name that's going on this product. And they're going to be fine, Zach. At the end of the day, they are going to be perfectly fine. Maybe this isn't the season. We went into that game thinking they're going to beat Stanford. They're going to be 5-2. And then all they have to do is find one more win in this gauntlet of the remainder of their season. And they get to a bowl game, which I think was really the height of expectations and where those expectations should have been. Now, I don't see 2 wins remaining on that schedule. And even beating Arizona, which we had kind of penciled in as a win, they just beat the tar out of Washington State. They have an uphill battle that they are approaching. And I think a game like this, going into a bye week, we're going to see one or two things, Zach. We're going to see them respond and realize that all this glitz and glamour and attention and all these celebrities on the sideline, it's going to go away because nobody cares about a losing football program. So they're either going to crumble under their pressure or they're going to allow it to turn them into diamonds, and they're going to once again exceed expectations in the remainder of the schedule the way that they did the first few weeks of the season.
I fully agree. I don't know. I think they can get back to that. It's just, I don't know. The problems are widespread. I want to hit on what you said about the coordinators. Like, I agree. I think awful performance from Charles Kelly. I think you can blame the players, but it's also like these are college kids. And when the problem is that widespread through a unit, it's on the coordinator. It's not like 15 players on the defense don't know what they're doing. Okay, it's not on those 15 players. It's on the coordinator for not coaching them up.
Right.
That's problematic. I've had plenty of my issues with Sean Lewis. I didn't have as many this week. But yeah, Coach Prime prided himself on this being a disciplined team. Fast, smart, tough, disciplined. They're not playing smart and they're not playing disciplined. And frankly, they're not playing tough either. I think they're fast, but I don't think they're the other three. And again, I'm not trying to rate Deion over the coals. He's done a very good job in 1 year, but they are not playing up to their talent level at this point, which is crazy. I did not think we'd be saying that about CU this year, but like they should have stomped CSU. They are a couple touchdowns better than CSU. They're a touchdown to 10 points better than Arizona State. They're probably 10 to 2 touchdowns better than Stanford. And like some of it's crazy stuff, like that touchdown in overtime that Stanford got where he wraps around Travis Hunter. Like that's nuts, but I don't know. Like I think the only glaring talent disparity was like in the secondary. They could not cover Stanford really down the stretch. Other than that, it was just like they were the worst. They looked like the more poorly coached team. And that was not the case at the start of the season. It's degrading.
Yeah. And speaking of that, and speaking of the struggles in the secondary, and this is another thing that you and I talked about during the game. We were very excited for Travis Hunter to be back. Obviously, it's Travis Hunter. He's one of, if not the most dynamic football players in all of college football. So having him back obviously is a massive boost to your team. And we started to see some cracks in the first half defensively. Offensively, I think that he gave you everything that you could ever ask for and more in that situation. But in the secondary, Zach, like he was a liability. He actually got beat deep really bad in that first half. And the ball was just overthrown. And it was kind of like, all right, he's knocking the rust off. Like at least they didn't complete it. That's fine. Stick and move. And I think what the problem is, and this is, again, something that we had talked about, playing a receiver is action. Cornerback is reaction. So it's much easier after being out for a month plus to come back and reacclimate yourself into that wide receiver role because it's just all action. Cornerback is a much more difficult position. It's a much more nuanced position than wide receiver is. And I honestly, man, I think that Stanford picked up on what Travis Hunter was putting down in the first half. And again, like it's hard for me to blame it because if it's not for Travis Hunter, that game isn't as much of a blowout in the first half. And then, it's probably even worse in the second half than it was. And so maybe maybe this is like the kind of time that you should have limited his snaps more and said, you know what? And like maybe they need to see that he's struggling on defense. And maybe they need to put in Cormani McClain, which is something that I want to get to. But it's like Travis Hunter is struggling on defense. Okay, pull him. He needs another week. You're facing a bye week. Let him reacclimate himself. Let him get another 2 weeks of practice under his belt. And let Cormani McClain get some reps. And as a transition to that, Zach, Cormani McClain is one of the best recruits that CU has ever landed. In fact, I think the best, correct? Third. Okay. And something that you and I had talked about is, man, we had stars in our eyes, right? It's like, how many kids of Cormani McClain's stature can go to a school and not start right away, but because of the situation, like because Deion Sanders is the coach, it's understandable, right? But there's got to be something to this. We have seen Cormani McClain play, and he is very clearly better than what we saw on Friday night. Stoutmire was getting cooked up and down the field. He looked lost in a lot of the positions. In fact, I think he was the one that slipped when Ayumanor took that 97-yard slant to the house, which, by the way, they kept running the slant over and over and over again, just like when CSU kept running the drag. They had no answer for it. I think that falls on the DC, but again, that's another discussion. Let's circle back. How does it not get so bad where you're seeing this happen in the second half? Slowly but surely, Stanford is clawing their way back in, and it's all because your secondary is falling apart. It has to be really bad off the field, Zach, for them not to want to put Cormani McClain in there. Like, there is obviously something behind the scenes that we are not seeing. And it's something bigger than football, because Deion is not going to reward certain behavior. So if you have to speculate, but why are they not playing Cormani McClain?
I think it's film study. I mean, you go back to his days with Jackson State. I think it might have been like one of his very early CU press conferences. He talks about how, or it was later on Jackson State press conference. He talks about how he looks at these, iPad apps that see how much film everyone's viewing, and he will start the people watching the most film. If you are a starting player, you're expected to be watching more film than the backup. You have more to prepare for, so you should be watching more film. That's kind of Deion's philosophy. I would say that Carter Stoutmire is watching more film, showing up for meetings on time more regularly than Cormani. I mean, Coach Prime said as much in his press conference. I think those work ethic things are what's not there. And Cormani's not the first guy that would be true of. We talked about it, or I mentioned how he's, maybe not number one. He's actually third. You know who is number one? Darryl Scott. You know what Darryl Scott did in college football? Nothing. Even after he went to South Florida and a smaller conference. Like, sometimes, like, it doesn't always work out for these high school guys, because in high school, you can just win on athleticism. You are going to dog these guys. If you are an NFL caliber athlete, you are going to see maybe one of those guys in like the state championship, but otherwise, like, you're going to be cruising all year long. So I don't know. I'm not, that said, I don't think it's over for Cormani. I do think Deion is an old school, fairly strict head coach, and this is just right in line with those. And something I've been thinking about a lot, we did talk about some of the things we wanted to highlight in the show, and I knew we were going to talk about Cormani, is Jimbo Fisher and Jameis Winston. There's been exposés written on this story, and I think it's very instructive. Jameis Winston was a super highly recruited quarterback, of course, was immediate superstar at Florida State. Didn't he win the Heisman as a true freshman, or at least was close to it? It was awesome. And had a ton of off-field issues, and Jimbo just kind of swept him under the rug and allowed him to keep playing. Let him get away with murder, or it was like a half game suspension or whatever. Let him get away with murder. And there's been these pieces written about how that kind of destroyed Florida State's program. If you'll remember, they were like one of the top 3 programs in the country, year in, year out.
They won a natty. While Jameis Winston was there. Absolutely.
And then Winston leaves, and they fall to being like a 5-7, 4-8, 6-6 program every year. And it's not just like, yes, they lost a lot of talent in the draft and everything, but the culture was destroyed by the fact they weren't holding Winston accountable the same way they were holding everyone else accountable, because they went, hey, he's this big recruit, he's this big star, whatever. And it just quickly deteriorated from there, because now all of a sudden the second best player on the team is like, well, he's getting that, why am I not getting that? And then the third best player on the team is like, well, they're getting that, why am not I getting that? And it just
it's a dangerous precedent to set from the top down.
And it's not about winning games this season. It's about rebuilding the program. And that's the talent pool, that's the rep the program has, and it's also the culture within that locker room. And I don't think you want to go, hey, I know all of you in this locker room are seeing Cormani like not pulling his weight. We're going to reward that behavior. I don't think you want to do that.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. And it just gets back to what we're talking about. It's not a talent thing. It's clearly not a talent thing. I think anytime that you see Cormani on the field, you can tell that he deserves to be out there. But he strikes me as the kind of kid, like you said, when he was in high school, he probably dominated. He was probably routinely the best player on the field at any given time, and it probably wasn't remotely close. And so I think there's a little bit of a culture shock. And, you know, maybe we should be grateful that Deion is the head coach, because if anybody can get through to him from where he's at right now, it's probably Deion. But then this is also the issue that we run into with NIL money. And I will never, ever, ever be the individual that says that these kids should not benefit off of their likeness, because honestly, it's criminal if they're not allowed to. I do, however, think, Zach, the NCAA made a mistake basically going 0 to 60. It's like you went from not being able to make any NIL money whatsoever to, yeah, man, go nuts. Get whatever that you can get. It's like you got to put a cap on it. You have to maybe put some of it towards an education. Like there should be certain limits. There should be certain parameters. And part of me feels like the NCAA did this so that in a few years they can circle back and see how out of control it's gotten, where these young kids, these 19, 20-year-old kids are making more money than professional athletes. But that's another conversation for another day. You have a kid like Cormani McClain who was fresh out of high school. Zach, I remember what I was like all through college, let alone my freshman year. I was kind of a piece of shit my freshman year. Not that I was like a bad guy, but like I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I stayed up until 2 a.m. routinely, not even partying, but like just because I could. I ate whatever I wanted. I gained freshman 15, not because I was drinking, but because I ate like shit and I didn't take care of myself, because I existed outside of the real world parameters of what should be expected from me, because I was a young, dumb kid. So I will never, ever, ever pass judgment for a college student acting like a college student. And I think that's important to keep in mind. It's like, here we are as adults. I mean, obviously, I'm like 10 years older than you. So there's a big difference. There's a big gap between even the two of us. You were in college more recently, but far be it from us to pass judgment on these guys who are basically kids, right? They're still in the process of growing up. Like their frontal lobe isn't fully developed yet. But at the same time, you are making this kind of money. You have this kind of notoriety. You've been given an excellent opportunity to play for the best cornerback to ever play the game, or top 3 certainly, and you're pissing away the opportunity. And if this trajectory continues, Zach, it wouldn't surprise me if Cormani transfers. If he goes somewhere, he might have it easier, where it's like, you know what, Cormani, watch all the film that you want, however many hours, whatever you're comfortable with, show up to practice, do your thing as best you can, but you're going to play because you're just that good. And it's a catch-22. I don't want kids like that in our program, and I know that Deion doesn't either. But at the same time, to an extent, you are sacrificing talent. And so all we can do is hope and pray that Cormani figures it out. But again, I don't want to pass judgment on this kid, okay? And I think if you're watching this and maybe you're a little bit too old to remember what college was really like, just try and put yourself in his shoes. You're making way too much money as a teenager, and you probably don't know how to handle yourself like an adult. That's where someone like Deion comes in. And if Deion can't get through to him, I don't know who could.
And I'm sorry, what being an adult is like too. Like, I think it's heightened when you're a kid, but oh my God, a Minesweeper came installed on like every computer in the early 2000s, and all you had it at your work. Like, I'm talking to the generation before me right now. All you had it at whatever work computers you were doing, whatever thing, and you had solitaire and whatever. And we all know the lion's share of everyone was doing it. And I don't blame, like, everyone kind of like, hey, you find the dead spots and you do whatever. Like, everyone does it. And I'm sure there's some buddy with a puritanical work ethic right now going like, no, I work hard all the time. And I would challenge that. I bet if we followed you around for a day or two, we could find the areas where you're coasting a little, and that's fine. It's human nature.
It's okay.
I'm not
it's
saying
okay.
Yeah, I'm not saying he deserves to be rewarded for it, but it's also like, let's not act like it's some alien trait. I think it's fairly understandable, especially when you consider he finally gets put into the lineup after maybe an entire summer of lacking work the first few weeks. And then he gets over that bar for a while. That bar's also probably lowered because of injury. Immediately comes in and he's awesome. Okay, if I was in Corbani's shoes, I'd be like, okay, maybe I don't really need to be doing this work because I'm pretty great.
Sure.
Also, you've been dominating in Florida, like tough place to play high school. Your whole high school, like he's gonna have to learn some things. It's what you said. He is being out on his own as an adult for the first time. He's not a grown man yet. He's still a kid, and I don't know. I think it's fair to keep that all in mind. This isn't NFL football. This is college football.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's try and regroup a little bit, Zach. Obviously, we're a little bit distraught. I mean, you kind of went from on the trajectory to be a bowl team or attending a bowl game to now, man, it's really going to be an uphill battle. For the last 5 games are against ranked opponents, and even the team that's not ranked, Arizona, looks like a good football team. And I think it's important to keep everything in perspective. We talked about it last week. There are going to be disappointments. There are going to be games that like feel like they're in hand and they're not going to win. Like, I think the remainder of the season, it might be a little rough. In fact, I'm anticipating that it's going to get kind of rough. Now, hopefully they're able to recover from the Stanford debacle, and hopefully there's a little bit of humility that sets in, because again, you can get all the attention in the world early on. Nobody wants to tie their wagon to a losing program. Now, they're still trending in the right direction, and they still have the Dion effect. But, Zach, the height of all of this notoriety was when they were 3-0, was when they were a ranked team, was when they beat TCU when they weren't supposed to, and then they had a thriller against CSU in overtime. And now they're seeing life on the other side of the coin. And I think it's really going to test the resolve of this team, whether they will recover from this and maybe be able to find 2, if not 3 more wins, which I think is a really, really heavy ask right now, versus almost mailing it in and saying, damn, we gave up a 29-point lead to Stanford. I can't believe we lost to Stanford, especially in that manner. It's going to get so much harder now. And it's like you're in quicksand, where the harder they fight, the deeper that they sink, if I may quote the Replacements, right? So I think this next game, this UCLA game, and UCLA is a very, very talented school. They have once again, they have a wide receiver that I think CU is going to have a very difficult time stopping. And we are really going to get a glimpse into what this team is made of, because now all the attention, it's not going to be there, Zach. And there's going to be a little bit more criticism. And it's not going to be just the criticism from the haters, you know, the individuals that Dion had talked about. It's going to start coming from inside the house. It's going to start coming from CU fans. It's going to start coming from people such as you and me, who have, you know, arguably the best CU talk show that you can find on YouTube. Like, individuals like us are going to talk about how they are not living up to expectations. And it's going to be interesting to see how they progress through this, because it's one thing to have haters doubt you. It's another thing to have your fans doubt you. And we don't want to pass doubt, and we don't want to pass judgment. And we still believe that this program is headed in the right direction, but we're starting to get the sense that this might not be the year. So you tell me, Zach, how do you see the remainder of this season going? and give me a little bit of a preview or a hype up of what you need to see as an analyst of the game and as a fan of this team.
Okay, here's one thing I want to mention. If they lose every game from here on out, they will have hit the over on their Vegas over-under win total. Like, it's
right.
I don't know. They've already outperformed expectations this season. So it might get bad from here on out. No one thought it was good, or not no one, but most people did not think it was going to be this good the first year. Like gambling experts and everything were like, hammer the under on that. It's a very, 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 very tough schedule. That's another important thing to remember. But it's also what I said 2 weeks ago. I said the Pac-12 always cannibalizes itself. There's probably one of these games we think CU is going to win where they're going to get snake bitten. And there's probably one of these games where we think they're going to lose and they're going to snake bite someone. And I stand by that. I think, it's crazy they lost that Stanford game. I wouldn't be surprised if they come out and beat UCLA off the bye. Like, that's totally possible. One thing to remember with that Stanford game, CU was on a short week and Stanford was off a bye. It'll be, UCLA won't be coming off a short week, but it'll be reversed for this UCLA game where UCLA is having a normal week of prep and CU's coming off the bye. That'll be a good chance to see what these coordinators can do. We saw a lot of coaching errors. How does this team bounce back? And to your point, Mario, I think it's going to be what we want to see down the stretch. What's the adversity of this unit like? Because they are talented enough to hang with any of these teams. Like, I think they're all, not all, I wouldn't say Arizona's better, but the other 4 teams on the schedule are better than CU. They are ahead of CU on their timelines. 1,000%.
And I would say like marketably better.
Yeah, but I think CU can hang with all of them. I don't think it's like Oregon. I don't think there's that great of a talent disparity.
No,
like there is a talent disparity. Those teams are better right now. They're deeper, yada, yada, yada. CU can beat it. Teams ranked in the teens lose to unranked teams, sometimes even bad teams, every weekend of college football.
Routine.
It's one of the best parts of college football are the upsets. And CU has the talent to give every single one of the teams remaining on their schedule a scare. Not that they have to do it every week, but hang in, like make some noise. I don't even care if they win another game this year, but show like you are a tough out. And let's see what the general adversity of this program is like. I'm sure some people aren't going to be in for it. I'm sure I'm sure some things are going to crop up. I don't know what it'll be. Maybe it is a Cormani transferring. Like, who knows? Maybe it's some guys getting benched. But I don't know. I think they need it. Like, this is part of the process. And I think in the long run, this is good news for CU. If they kept winning and go like 7-5 year one, Dion might get poached year one. This is going to probably end up being a little more reasonable, 4-8, 5-7, and he's still going to have plenty of buzz. But I do think it makes it less likely he's one and done, which it should be music to the ears of CU fans.
Yeah. Speaking of all the hype around Dion, go ahead and play that SNL clip. Obviously, the writer's strike is over, and Kenan Thompson was doing Kenan Thompson things in which he imitates somebody, but then he doesn't actually change his voice. But somehow he still does a pretty good job of imitating the person. Go ahead and hit that, Zach.
Prime time in the house. You know what I'm saying? We just keep winning, man. Every game, every minute, we winning at life.
Yeah. Well, you're also 4-3, so so you have lost a few.
Colin, look at me, man. What about me makes you think that I care about what you think about me? Huh? You don't understand that my team has it all, man. Coaching, genius. Offense, explosive. Defense, triumph.
I love the closing line there. The coaching, genius, offense, explosive, defense, trying. I think that's pretty perfect.
I didn't love how it started, where he's like, yeah, we just keep winning. They took it a little bit too far because they made Dion seem right. But I get it. It's farcical. But the part where he's like, look at me, man. What about me makes you think I care what you think or whatever he said? That was perfect. That was like the best imitation of Dion that you could do because he genuinely doesn't care. And so the reason that I wanted to pull this clip, I mean, obviously it's funny and it's great to see Colorado represented, but like again, man, like, and I hounded on this last week, and I know that game sucked. I know that giving up a 29-point lead to an inferior opponent sucks. It freaking sucks. But keep everything in perspective. Like, we went from a 1-11 program who was lucky to win the one game, who really wasn't in any other football game the rest of the season, to now our head coach is having skits done about him. It's like, Zach, that's Saturday Night Live, a staple of television for decades, since before either of us were born, right? And here is a guy portraying the coach of the Colorado Buffaloes. So there's the CU logo on his hat. There's the CU logo on his sweatshirt. All press is good press, baby. Keep that into perspective. Like, it is so cool and it is so unique to see this. Like, we don't know if we as Colorado sports fans will ever see anything like this ever again, because I'm pretty sure the last time that a Colorado sports team was represented on Saturday Night Live, Zach, I'm pretty sure it was the Tim Tebow sketch where he like met Jesus and Jesus said that he was a fan of Matt Prater because he was out there hitting 50-plus yard field goals to win. So just enjoy this. Like, as a CU fan, if you're watching this, enjoy it. This season is not going to end maybe the way that you want it to. And it likely won't end in a bowl game as we stand right now. But this is a process. You are building something bigger than you could ever imagine. This is merely the first step in maybe a 5 or 6 year process to really get to the point where you are a national title contender. Now, the only thing that we have to make sure of, Zach, is that Deion is not coaching. Yeah, maybe them not going 8-4 and going to like a New Year's Eve type of bowl game, or even in the college football play. Like, yeah, maybe that does keep Deion at CU for a little bit longer. But if I am someone in the front office at CU, if I'm the person that makes those kind of decisions, I'm first of all calling Deion into my office and I'm opening a dialogue and I'm saying, what do you need to keep you here as long as possible? Because like we had discussed last week, I get the sense that once Deion is done at CU, I honestly think he might be done. I think the health is a problem with his foot and how well he can get around. And someone who's been so successful at everything, like maybe he rebuilds the program, doesn't necessarily reach the mountaintop, but gets CU to be, you know, a national contender, you know, like a top 10, top 15 type team. And he calls it quits because maybe he just wants to have some freedom in his life. Maybe he wants to not be bogged down by coaching. But I'm opening that dialogue with Deion and saying, what do we need to do to keep you here as much as possible? What do we need to do to make sure that you do not leave? Do you want stock options? Do you want royalties? Do you want, 10 cents on the dollar for every single article that we sell, prime or not, in the bookstore? Work out something, man, because this will never happen again. There is not a human being on this planet who could have come in and done what Deion has done, not just from a win-loss standpoint, but from a notoriety standpoint. The top 10 games that have been viewed this season in college football, Zach, at least going into this weekend, 5 of them were CU. You will likely never see that ever again from Colorado once Deion is gone. Once the primetime Deion Sanders enigma is gone from college football coaching, we might never see anything like that again. So appreciate it. Even if it's in jest, appreciate that Keenan Thompson is doing a very half-assed Deion Sanders impression. And it's funny because if anything, man, you get to see this gorgeous logo right here on national TV, whether it's being spoofed or not. And we love to see it.
Yeah, no, it's I don't know, it's huge. It helps recruiting. It makes you more of a national brand. They were a total afterthought for so long, and I don't know how many types or how many programs have ever gotten this amount of publicity in their entire history. Like Oklahoma, Texas, Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State. Like, it's the blue blood school.
The big boys.
Like Florida, like it's the most legit real deal schools have gotten have experienced stuff like this, like being on SNL, being this deep in the cultural zeitgeist, and not to this extent. Like no one's had this many celebrities on their sidelines outside of like the USC Trojans, but I just mean generally, like being a part of like having movies made about you or whatever. There's not many programs that can really say that, and I think it's absolutely valuable.
Yeah, I think the 30 for 30 in 5 years or whatever documentary they do, and I'm sure there's going to be more than one. It's going to be incredible, man, right? And maybe then we'll get a peek behind the curtain as to what on the earth is happening with Cormani McClain. Obviously, no game to preview, Zach. We have the bye week coming up. Any final thoughts? Anything that you want to get off your chest for the remainder of the show? What you got for us?
Play on McCaskill more. We finally got to see him. I thought, what we saw, although it was like limited usage, was pretty good. I think CU still trying to establish a ground game, and it's tough. I think they have good running backs, just the line's doing nothing for them. But Alden McCaskill, I think, will be their best back. He can do a lot of the pass stuff out of the pass game. He's explosive, not to Dylan Edwards' extent, but he's got a lot of that explosive ability. He's Hankerson dialed up a couple more notches. Right. In my opinion, it's like a little better in every facet. When I was watching his old Houston tape, it was very reminiscent of like Lev Bell to me, is what I see in his game. I think the Buffs could use it. I hope we see a lot more of him down the stretch.
Yeah, as much as I like seeing Shedeur Sanders breaking CU records, and at some point during the season, he'll set the touchdown record. He'll probably set the yardage record. I mean, he's going to put together a season that we have literally never seen at the University of Colorado, and it's going to be awesome. And as much as I want to see that, I want to see a balanced offensive attack more. And honestly, Zach, it seems like these last few games, they've run the ball pretty well, and they just completely abandon it. So the one thing that I want to see when things start working on offense, just keep doing it. If you have a play that they cannot stop, just keep running that play until they stop it. Like football at its core is a very simple concept, right? Everything about it is really easy. Now, the details, the minutia, that's what's complicated. But when it comes down to brass tacks, you just have to be better than the other person. You find something that works, you continue to do that thing that works until it no longer works. And then what do? Then you find something else that works. And if you need proof, let's circle back to what CSU did against CU, where all they did, Zach, was run shallow crossers and drags, and it worked throughout the entire game. And then what Stanford just did on Friday, where they just ran slant after slant after slant after slant. You knew it was coming. The cornerbacks knew it was coming. Everyone in the stadium knew that it was coming, and they still could not stop it. Why? We don't really know why. Stanford didn't even know why they couldn't stop it, but they couldn't stop it. So they kept doing the same thing over and over again. CU has the talent on offense to be able to get away with that kind of stuff. And I know, and maybe it's difficult, Zach, that they have all of this kind of unique talent. A Horn, a Weaver, a Hunter, Omari and Miller, and, all the running backs. It's like there are a lot of guys to choose from. There are a lot of targets to choose from. Maybe it's a little bit overwhelming for the OC, and it's like he doesn't really know who he wants to feature. And that kind of gives us a flashback to what we discussed last week, where it seems like there's a different flavor of the week at wide receiver every single game. I would like to see some consistency. You have the talent that's out there. Find something that works and run that play into the ground until it gets stopped. It doesn't need to be that difficult. And on the defensive side of the ball, maybe know when you're supposed to be on the field. Can we start there? Can we just start with like 11 guys in the huddle on the field in the correct personnel groupings that they are supposed to be in? And then maybe we can build on that, Zach, because I swear to God, if we see a handful more procedural penalties from the freaking defense, I'm going to throw my shoe through the GD Oh, yeah, classic Zach is muted.
It's yeah, I'm with you. I can't do this anymore. They need to clean up the coaching.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us again. I know it's really hard to be a fan in Colorado. Unfortunately, it seems like we will not get a week when the Broncos and Buffs both win. We can hold out hope. But I honestly cannot tell you the last time that it happened. It was probably before COVID shut the world down. We'll have to go back and do some research, Zach, see if and when the last time CU and the Denver Broncos both won in the same weekend, because it sure as hell hasn't been this year, and it sure as shit wasn't last season. So, yeah, just hang in there. I think you got to hit bottom before you bounce back. Last year was CU's rock bottom, and they recognized that it was rock bottom, and now they're starting to trend upward. I think for the Denver Broncos, you are seeing rock bottom right now. And what does rock bottom mean, Zach? That you have nowhere else to go but up. And as long as you are rocking with me, Mario Vitanzi, and with this dude right here, Zach Seegers, we are taking you nowhere but up, up, up. We are always trending up in the right direction, bringing you the best, in our opinion, CU football show that you will listen to ever on any channel at any time. And we don't lack in humility either. If you want to follow us, once again, I am at Vitanzi Therapy. Zach is at Zach_Seegers. You can click the link in the video if you want to check out some merch. This gorgeous shirt right here that makes my muscles look nice and big. That is also available at the store. We got some other, some funny Broncos shirts, some CU shirts. All of your support is welcome. And if you want to look swagged out, that's a great place to start. And what else you got for us, Zach? Anything closing? Anything else to like save our souls after this god-awful football weekend?
Yeah, if there are any Broncos fans watching, I've got a good little salary cap breakdown up on the channel telling you everything you need to know about how the Broncos can offload the Russell Wilson contract. And then I'd also like to thank all our viewers for helping us reach 1,000 subscribers. This will be the first show airing now that LTB has 1,000 subscribers. So thank you to Mario for coming along for the ride, and thank you everyone for supporting what we've built here.
So what you're saying, Zach,
brand new.
is
it's pretty awesome.
You guys hit that 1,000 marker once Mario came aboard. Do I understand?
You guys correct? You're definitely the rocket, the jetpack that we tied ourselves to launch us up there.
I appreciate you saying that. I know you're mean to me behind closed doors, but it's nice for you to build me up in the public. All right, everybody. We thank you all again so much. We try to have fun. We really hope that you have fun along for the ride with us. We will be back next week to preview CU UCLA. I'm sure someone is going to say something stupid about Dion or the Buff Sack, and they're going to give us fodder to discuss. But until that time, I'm Mario Vitanzi. That's been Zach Seegers. Thank you all so much for joining us. Good night. God bless, and Go Buffs.